Ruth Fajardo in Norwalk, Connecticut, an hour outside New York City. Ruth was a stay-at-home mom, living alone with her kids in public housing. One night, while the children were sleeping upstairs, bullets came flying through the windows and front door. Ruth's children weren't physically hurt, but her older daughters, Andrea and Michelle, can't shake the memory. Ruth fell into a deep depression.
Everything stresses me. I get angry easily, so my kids weren't like that. They were screaming at each other, they were fighting a lot, so I thought I was transmitting that to them.
You were transmitting that.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Jack Shonkoff is a pediatrician and director of the Harvard Center on the Developing Child. He says stressful situations provoke a physical response. Anyone can experience toxic stress, but Shonkoff says poverty presents the type of chronic adversity that can cause it. Low-income families are also more likely to live in neighborhoods with high rates of crime, drug abuse, and failing schools.
Good afternoon. My name is Tom McTague.
I'm Kaylana Abate. I'm Gabriella Abate.
And my name is Samuel de la Spreda, and today we're going to discuss to what extent does poverty's negative impact on child development influence urban crime rates since the 1990s.
Maturing in an impoverished environment negatively affects child development as children are exposed to violence, health complications, and prone to unequal representation under the law. Inhibiting these factors, it impairs individual development, causing an uprise in urban crime rates.
According to a policy series by the International Academy of Education, more than a quarter of children below 5 years of age are underweight due to poor diet and malnutrition, making them less able to concentrate in school. Poverty worsens malnutrition by compromising the quality of food intake, which further leads to a decreased concentration. Concentration is pivotal to academically succeed, and with this absent, individuals will ultimately fail. Based off a study examining the relationship between education and crime by Lance Lanchner, in 1997, 75% of state and 59% of federal U.S. inmates did not have a high school diploma. The role of education increases future legitimate work opportunities, which discourages participation in crime. With children of poverty academically failing from malnutrition, their future legitimate work opportunities will be narrow.
Health of the impoverished not only affects their education, but also their mental health. Looking at a study by the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Preventions, we can see here that substance use and anxiety are the most prominent among youth offenders, as it has been reported that 2/3 of offenses have been associated with a psychiatric disorder, and 39% of those diagnosed with more than one. Now, this is because children in poverty are more likely to have emotional dysregulation, making them more prone to acquiring a mental illness. Poverty would cause an illness to become prolonged, causing severity to progress. Impaired emotion regulation causes actions of crime due to the inability to judge and make decisions on a situation in a rightful and moral manner.
Poverty can be described as when a person's resources are not sufficient enough for their minimum needs. This causes emotional situations to arise, escalating the chance of violence. Based on a poverty and crime study by the Joseph Franchi Foundation, those who live in poverty engage in acts of violence, and poverty can precipitate spontaneous acts of violent rage. Violence is seen as a way to those in poverty to cope with problems of everyday life. Based off this bar graph from the Bureau of Justice Statistics, displayed is the rate of violence to household income level. The poorest household has the highest violence rate, while the higher income households have a lower violence rate.
The actions of a child all start from the roots of their lives. Children being exposed to parental anger and violence disrupts a child's ability to respond to situations. Looking at a study by the Lancet Public Health on associations between parental income inequality and child risk for criminality says, exposures to parental psychopathology and frequent residential mobility during adolescence have reported stronger links to violent offending. This shows how economic instability, which is a product of poverty, would cause stress and conflict on parents, resulting in negative parenting skills and child neglect. With parents feeding these aspects into their child's lives, causes them to expose children to negative coping strategies, resulting in children acting out in similar ways such as verbal or physical aggression.
The courts do not treat poor people and those with higher incomes the same. According to a scientific journal done in 2015, William Boyd School of Law shows that the problem in the poor people's courts is not that merely any individual or are merely individuals or need access to representation. individuals are underrepresented and need assistance, but rather that the routine operation creates a social hierarchy. It also assesses the ability of justice interventions such as civic Gideon and self-help legal services to help illuminate or challenge subordinate practice in the poor people's courts. This is proving that poor people, whether or not can afford a private lawyer or legal self-help, will be struggling in the courts. Additionally, according to a scientific paper done in 2013, Georgetown University, it showed the problem with the American justice system wasn't that poor people have ineffective lawyers, but rather that the system selectively targets them. Selectively targeted by police, prosecutors, and lawmakers. This is showing that when they are inside the courts, they are targeted, and even before they enter, they are also targeted.
Following inequality within the legal justice system, a 1997 research study done by Paul D. Butler, a professor at the Georgetown University, found that over 50% of state inmates were earning less than $1,000 in the month before their arrest. This comes out to about $12,000 annually, well below the $25,000 median per capita income in that same year. If you draw your attention to this pie chart, you can see that the poor people earning less than $12,000, which was the majority of the inmates, are less than half of the national poverty line. The same year, 35% of state inmates were unemployed in the month before their arrest, compared to the national unemployment rate of 4.9%. As concluded, we can see the majority of the incarcerated were either unemployed or living off less than half of the national poverty line. Living impoverished can lead to exposed violence, putting those at risk to the injuries of the legal justice system.
A solution to decrease the influence of poverty is having government-funded programs to relocate children to better living conditions. In this manner, children will be maturing in a more improved environment. Ideally, this will guide individuals to be more successful in the future and less likely to turn towards criminal actions.
Now, while this is a good solution, government-funded programs to relocate families to less impoverished areas will still cost taxpayers money. And with all government-funded programs, we will face opposition from individuals who believe the spending budget can be dealt with differently.
One way to reduce violent actions done by children in poverty is for them to meet with a psychiatrist. The impact of this is to hope that they'll get a professional help to aid their mental health, to hope to find them stability in their mindset, emotions, and their actions.
But children will have trouble seeing a psychiatrist as it can be difficult to manage financial strain, as well as government closure of psychiatric hospitals limits a child's options for help.
Our third solution is to provide informative courses to families in poverty about the struggles of raising a child, the financial struggles. The goal of this is to hope that financially unstable individuals to refrain from having children so we don't have a child put right away into poverty. If we can stop the problem before the problem is formed, we'll be able to isolate the poverty from within and hopefully reduce the amount of young individuals who have to go through this financial strain.
Now, this solution does not come without a cost. The process of developing and implementing informative resources for families in poverty will cost a significant amount of money. If we are unable to receive government funding, this will be a large limitation to our solution, as our target audience would be impoverished.
To conclude, in our final analysis, as poverty is constantly growing around the world, impoverished environments are produced, with children being under conditions that expose them to health complications and violence. Their development is deemed immature, therefore provoking children to perform crime.
This is our works cited, and as Aristotle once said, poverty is the parent of crime. Thank you. Any questions?
Come together if you would. All right, Ty, you're up first. Reflecting on your colleagues' work, which one had the greatest impact on your overall understanding of the problem that your group identified?
Kaylana helped me the most in understanding understanding our problem, because she discussed the education and the benefits and the negatives, and with lack of education, you put kids right into crime.
All right, thank you. Kaylana, what is a way in which your team's solution makes you think different about your own individual research?
So our team solution mainly revolved around how to change the effects of the influence of poverty onto children in poverty. My individual research was just strictly on the idea of how poverty impacts child development in regards to education. So then within our solutions, I have to think more about how poverty affects child development, not in regards to education, but more of the idea overall.
All right, thank you. Gab, describe an argument from one of your peers' individual reports that makes you think differently about your team's solution.
Ty's argument made me think different about our solution because my work was more based on the connection from poverty to child development, and Ty's was on poverty to crime. And over reading his work, it allowed me to better understand our resolution and the underlying cause of negative child development, which is poverty.
Sam, if you had another team member, what perspective or limitation could they have reached that would have made a useful contribution to this project?
If we had another team member, we would have made their perspective based on the politics of the situation. This would have been helpful to support our presentation so we know what is currently being done to help out the situation and what else we can personally do ourselves to add, such as new policies and other regulations like that to try to fix this problem.